See the most
There's nothing that stops you.
an aggressive growth sense out of
Yeah, so you get the book. Read the first chapter.
That's even better.
rapid shield launch.
And they,
You know,
Ty, every single day we get together, and I feel like this week's message about the future of leadership coaching is so perfect because everyone's looking for a leader.
You know, Charlene, leadership coaching is something that I feel has become one of the more accepted forms of coaching. Because people want to progress in their career, because people want to start a business, the concept of leadership coaching, it really gives people this like, okay, what do I need to know? What do I need? Like, who's done it before me that can help me shape what I want to do? And so leadership coaching as a concept, I think, is one of the more readily acceptable forms of coaching, the coaching that people understand the most, and is probably most translatable to a lot
Right.
of folks.
Well, and everyone in the industry that they're in probably has those iconic leaders, right? Probably has those specific influencers in their industry, but it's evolved, Ty, because now the introduction of AI, the introduction of technology, and for many of us in the space who've been coaches, we have seen this uptick, especially since COVID shut down. A lot of people are what I consider adapting and changing to the current landscape.
100%. So many factors in our society have changed and evolved, and it's AI, but it's technology on a whole, accessibility, education, even peer groups that we can now belong or access. A lot of it has now evolved into a place where it's all around us, and we're seeing examples of it, and we're seeing examples of what not to do. And so we are, that to me intrinsically tells someone that leadership isn't out of reach. Leadership isn't something that's hard. I want to be a leader. I can customize my leadership. And so, yes, there's a complete evolution taking place that is pushing people to, again, accept leadership coaching and look for ways to enhance their leadership skill.
Well, and I like that, Ty, because I think sometimes the riches are in the niches, right? If you're specific into an industry, and let's just use manufacturing, it's just a random, manufacturing has multiple pieces to it, right? Manufacturing can be in an aerospace industry. That aerospace industry could be favorable to government contracts. Maybe that's going to be construction and real estate. Like every single niche that people pick to do leadership coaching, they have to be able to understand all those different facets because that's what their coaching client wants you to understand is like, I'm in this specific industry, but these are the goals that I have. And if you don't understand all of those parts of the niche, it's really hard to help.
Yeah, and it's tailoring the basic concepts of, so I think, sure, that there are fundamental basic concepts that will never change over time, right? So there are some things you have to be human centric, you have to be systems oriented, you have to be very process driven, right? So there's things that will never change. Then you take, how is that applicable with technology in today's environment with a work from home schedule? Like that you have to customize it and tailor it to the environment that you're in. And then you look at the industry that you tailor it to, right? So then you look at, okay, what does it look like in energy? What does it look like in aviation? Male-dominated industries, male-dominated industries tend to typically require a different approach to leadership than a softer industry that's more emotional and more human, has more human elements to it. So all of these are now the layers that a leadership coach has to apply before they can really start getting transformation, right? You can't go back to the days of some coaches that I don't want to put anybody's name on the spot, but coaches who have existed and who are no longer with us but have books and courses. Those are ingrained in coaching and methodologies that happened back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and those were the foundations, and those help us a little bit with the first part of what I just shared. However, so much of times and life and human evolution has taken place since then. So we have to progress and really accelerate our approach to human development and leadership coaching.
Well, and I think leaders already are two facets, right? Leaders are either compelled to become a leader because of a situation or an opportunity, and then some are invited to progress, right? A lot of people will have a lot of, I call them a lot of ABCs after their name, and that's great. But to me, I'm thinking, what do those letters represent? What does that experience represent? Because a lot of leaders are born through catastrophe. A lot of leaders are born because of the necessity. And so leaders are looking for what I consider that coach who's going to be able to stand out of the CSA-ness so that they can stand out in the CSA-ness.
So you call it being called. I call it an awakening, right? It's when that untapped potential raises its head, because and the reason that I call it an awakening is because until that point you define leadership in a certain way, and then something happens, an evident a life instance or something potentially happens where you now have to step into that leadership role, and it's more times often not the definition of leadership that you once knew, or not the belief that you thought that that's what a leader looks like. Because if that were the case, you'd be pursuing it or you'd be practicing it before. So this activity, this action, this thing that takes place that forces you now to identify as a leader, it's often put into an untrained, raw environment. And this is where the potential for leadership coaching becomes real, right? You've stepped in, let's say, there's a crash or there's an accident, and you now step up and you help people get to safety, or you help people get, to a place where they can actually get together and make some decisions. You being the catalyst for that activation, that event, then now says, okay, I can be a leader, but what are now the follow-on? And this is where you see athletes and footballers and different people, like the U.S. captain that landed the U.S. Airways captain that landed the ship on the water. Like, this is where you start seeing them go now from just doing that one action to now having a coach, then going on stages and speaking to people in large audiences, and now teaching leadership, because they've realized, oh, this is what a leader looks like. Now, how do I polish this? How do I package this? And how do I make it available to the masses so that other people can be inspired and learn from what I did, that they can be leaders too? So this is the evolution in the future of leadership, and the reason why leadership coaching is critical to this, because left to their own devices, that person wouldn't know how to get from A to B to C. No, they now have that person, that partner, that pairing that will teach them, here are the fundamentals, here's what a standard best practice. Now here's how to take what you've done and apply it to this for your industry or other industries.
Well, and I think too, there's this more what I consider a transparent marketing strategy behind coaches, right? Because there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's multiple platforms. So it's a lot more visible, right? It's proof in the pudding. If your life is being led, with a leadership type of mentality, core value, integrity, it will show up in your life. And a lot of people now, the consumer is so much more educated, and they have so much more access to almost check it out to see that, okay, if you're talking about weight loss, but you're 500 pounds overweight, they're like, wait a minute, that's not the kind of coach I want, right? If you're going to be a leader in aviation, but you've never been in the aviation industry, they know that person may not be the coach for them. And so, Ty, I think there's so much visibility and awareness, like you're saying, in this awakening on both sides, for the customer as well as the aspiring coach.
100%. Now, it isn't even just so much that people can now fact check you in easier, and they can validate your stuff, and they want to know that you've done the things that you've said you've done, but also that you've worked for an extended period of time in a space. It's the fact that people also have options. It's the fact that if you are not the person you say you are, if you don't have the background, even if you have a little bit of the background that you say you do, I'm going to look at 10 other people, because now everything is accessible. Your background, your information, your qualifications, it's accessible, but so are that of tens of thousands of other people. And so with again, the advent of the internet, with the internet growing as much as it is, with AI being where it's at, technology, everything is now so much more readily accessible and available that you really have to step up your game. You really have to be that coach who has that background, who has that experience, who has that story, who has that credibility, who has those results and those transformations that people want to be a part of. Now, if you're an early stage coach, you don't have to have all those things right away, but you have to be transparent about where you are, why you are a choice for people, like what's your methodology, what's your why, and then what you're willing to do to gain that knowledge, experience, credibility, transformation, results that people will then come in droves, right? You can't come out as an early stage coach and say, I want to charge $600 an hour, and I'm going to take on, all these clients, and I'm going to market myself as this big guru. again, because people do those things in silos, they don't realize that there's 100 other people doing the same thing who actually have experience or transformational results that will pull that crowd because that credibility is there. I've seen coaches go from big enterprises down to little shops because they had not evolved. They had not seen what their competition looks like. They stayed agnostic of their competition, and as a result, they got eroded.
Mm. And guys, that's really where the future of, leadership coaching is going to be, because not only can you need to evolve and be relevant, but your consumer has evolved and they're more relevant. They understand what it takes to work remote. They understand what it takes in a virtual setup. Before COVID, Ty, I think that was a foreign language, a foreign concept. And now more than ever, people are like, so why can't I just meet on Zoom? Why do I have to drive to you? Why do I have to come to this event? And the irony is people want to be in person more than ever because of the overutilization of virtual and remote. That's the change, guys. In coaching, that's the change in anyone's business.
I did a focus group last night for the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce, and one of the things we discussed was the concept of virtual versus in-person events. And emphatically in the room, everyone said, I will not do an event online. I'm sorry. They only want to do in-person connections when they're local to their city. Now, larger scale events where you're tapping into international audiences, yes, people agree that that's an online thing, but locally, there's no excuse anymore. People want to connect when they're in a local city and they just have to drive within a 30-minute radius. They want to connect in person. So yes, people want to be in person, but they also recognize the value of online when it applies, when it makes sense. And so these are things that leadership coaching has to take into consideration. Conferences where you can get, a whole bunch of people together in a local city, meetups, those are things that you want to do in person. But yes, there's still a space for your one-on-ones. There's still a space for some group program. There's still a space for international conferences that connect people from different parts of the world. There's still a space for that online. You do have that desire to do in-person connections. So having a good balance of the two will make sense.
And, as you guys evolve and listen to this live as well as the replay, we want you to start where you are. None of this is assumed that, you guys are all enterprise level coaching. None of this assumes that, you have a tenure of 3, 4, 5 years of success. What we want you to do is kind of just start where you are, because the future of leadership coaching starts today. It's just that when you're pacing yourself and making these key decisions, our hope, and Ty, you and I have talked about this backstage, and we've talked about this week after week, is that we want coaches who are evolving into what we consider a hyper niche coach who can utilize what we consider the best tools in the business, right? And Ty, you've done that not only in your own coaching, but you also have supported and coached your own clients to be adaptable to this change, this evolution, this reposition of how coaches are perceived and actually running their businesses.
One of the key elements of that, Shar, to making sure that you're always on top of the pulse, you're always relevant, is to join a community or be part of a community where you're testing yourself, you're learning from, you're engaged with other people, ensuring that the community that you belong to is evolving, is pushing forward, is preaching that message of evolution, and being part of that community is what's going to give you the edge. That's going to make sure that you're doing the thing that you said you want to do. It's hard to build a coaching company or any company in isolation. It's lonely, it's hard. You don't know if you're always touching the pulse. You're depending on books and podcasts and TikToks to figure out, what everything is happening. But the human element is missing, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we started CoachCon, is that element of putting people together in a community where they can spend time with each other, where they can hear about speakers and they can hear from people who are experts in the field moving forward on coaching. And based on that, they can then customize their program, right? They can work with their leadership coach on customizing their program to make sure that they are advancing the model, making sure that they're relevant today, making sure that they're incorporating technology and uses. Everything that we've built in CoachCon is to evolve the coaching model.
And again, guys, as you continue to venture into coaching, or for some of you who are making some changes and what I consider adapting, reach out to us, connect with us. Ty, CoachCon is literally on its way. I know that we've launched a soft launch with our main speakers. I know that we're moving into that direction, but it is coming around the corner. And where can they reach out and connect to you and I? Where's the best place for them to come to?
So you can just DM me on right here, on LinkedIn or Facebook. It's Dr. Ty Rich on LinkedIn and Facebook, or you can visit us at coachconglobal.global.
Exactly. Guys, thanks again so much, Ty, and appreciate you. And can't wait, guys, to see you at CoachCon. And of course, reach out before then, because I know
Yes.
some of you have been very anxious to start your coaching business. We'd love to start that conversation.
All right. Thanks, Shar.
Thanks so much, Ty.